Go shopping for a two-door Merc and there is no shortage of options. You've got big ones, small ones, and everything in between. And this one behind me, that's one of the ones in between. It's the all-new E-Class Coupe, and it's a very different machine to the one before it. Now, if you cast your mind back to the previous E-Class Coupe, it was actually based on the C-Class, so underneath a stretch version of that platform. This one, it's based on the W213, the current generation E-Class, so straight away it is bigger. You're looking at more than 10 centimetres longer, and all that length has gone into the wheelbase, so rear seat room in particular has stepped up. And it is that space that makes the E-Class more appealing for some people. And it's not just rear seat space. In the front too, you certainly notice the extra millimetres, particularly to the width of the cabin. It's got a more stately feel. So yes, you're going to trade off a little bit in terms of agility compared with a C, but you make it up in comfort and obviously the ability to carry more people more regularly. Now instantly from the inside it feels like a bigger car. So you've got a lot more space, a lot more grace generally. It just feels more upmarket. Now, of course, the big thing with the E-Coupe is that it's bigger than the C-Class. I struggle on the back of a C-Class. This one, okay, I'm not going to want to do mega distances, but it is surprisingly comfortable, particularly legroom. You've got a fair bit of space back here. Headroom, yeah, getting a bit tight, but otherwise it's pretty good. And certainly the interior has stepped up enormously, so you get that restrained elegance of the E-Class. A few little changes, so the air vents, for example, the same basic layout with those big circular dials across the dash, but what's inside them is different. It looks fantastic. They've done a really good job, and just that tiny little change makes a world of difference to the sportiness of the car. One slight disappointment, you've got this enormous attention to detail pretty much everywhere, from the speaker grills, the window switches, the huge screens across the dash. All that stuff just is another level. But the actual air vents, those ones I was just telling you about, they feel cheap. They're like plasticky, so if only they felt as good as they looked. Now, just like Merc's done with the C Coupe and indeed with the E-Class, they've thrown pretty much everything at it for the Australian market, so heaps of gear as standard. One of the big ticket items, the Airmatic Suspension, so full adjustable air suspension, beautiful ride, so it does really glide along. I've got it in comfort mode at the moment, so dial it up to Sport or even Sport Plus, and you've still got a pretty nice ride. You're feeling a tiny bit more of those bumps, but overall, pretty good. The biggest change you notice going to Sport Plus is with the throttle sensitivity and the gear changes. It just dumps it down a gear or two and gives you sharper changes, so you sort of feel it just punch you back a tiny bit in the seat. Not that this one I'm in is going to shove you back in the seat enormously. It's the 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo, so the E300. So 180 kilowatts, it goes okay, but you're constantly aware that it's a pretty big car. You're dragging around all that weight, so you know, it's certainly not a rocket ship. If you want extra performance, go for the E400. Then you get the twin turbo V6. You also get four-wheel drive, so that really cool four-wheel drive system that's starting to come out on things like E63 and obviously E400 in Australia. Now, speaking of C63s and AMGs, Merc is doing something. They haven't said what yet, but you can expect the AMG treatment to hit the E-Class at some time, so that's when it'll get a bit special. For now though, it's clear the dynamics have been dialed up more for the comfort side rather than the sporty side, which is fine. It sort of suits the nature of the car. Just don't expect, I guess, a really nimble, agile sort of coupe. It's not about that. So when you start to dial things up, it hangs on fine. This one's on 20-inch Pirelli P0s, but the front end starts to give way. You end up falling into a bit of understeer, but overall, it's certainly an accomplished car. Sometimes though, you sort of just wish it had a bit more spark. The engine sounds okay, it's just nothing special. And similarly with the dynamics, it does a lot right, but it doesn't quite push your buttons. So when you're looking at it that sort of way, you start to think, well, maybe it's the sort of car that'll probably cruise around the fashionable suburbs, stop at the boutiques and the trendy cafes, rather than get thrashed down a winding country road. So is it all worth it? Well, it's more cruiser than bruiser. So if that's your thing, absolutely. And you'll certainly get more space than you will in a C. That said, if you go with a C, for the similar sort of money, you can probably push into an AMG. So for a lot of people, that'll do the trick. And of course, at the other end of the scale, you got the S-Class that's got even more luxury and a heap more space. Still, as a Goldilocks car, it hits a lot of high notes.